NASA research reveals the true cause of sea level rise since 1900s. Scientists gained a new insight into the process that has driven ocean levels variations or level variations for over a century, helping us prepare for the rising sea levels of the future. To make better predictions about the future impacts of sea level rise, new techniques are being developed to fill gaps in the historic record of sea level measurements. We know the factors that play a role in the sea level rise. Melting glaciers and ice sheets add water to the seas, and warmer temperatures cause water to expand. Other factors are known to slow the rise, such as dams impounding water on the land, steaming its flow into the sea. When each factor is added together, this estimate should match the sea level that scientists observe until now. However, the sea level budget has fallen short of the observed sea level rise, leading scientists to question why the budget wouldn't balance. A new study published on August 19th seeks to balance this budget. By gaining new insight to historic measurements, scientists can better forecast how each of the factors will affect sea level rise and how this rise will impact us in the future. For example, in recent flooding reports, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or better known as NOAA, noted a rapid increase in sea level rise related flooding events along the U.S. coast over the last 20 years. They are expected to grow intent, frequency, and depth as sea levels continue to rise. Factors driving our rising seas. On re-examining each of the known contributors to sea level rise from the 1900s to 2018, the research led by NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory in South California uses improved estimates and applies satellite data to better understand historic measurements. The researchers found that estimates of global sea level variations based on tide gauge observations and slightly overestimated global sea levels before the 1970s, located at the coastal stations scattered around the globe. Tide gauges are used to measure sea level height. They also found that mountain glaciers melting water was adding more water to the oceans than previously realized, but that the relative contributions of glaciers to sea level rise is slowly decreasing. And they discovered that glacier and Greenland ice sheet mass loss explains the increased rate of sea level rise before 1940. In addition, the new study found that during the 1970s, when dam construction was at its peak, sea level rise slowed to a crawl. Dams created reservoirs that can impound fresh water that would normally flow straight into the sea. That was one of the biggest surprises for me, said lead researcher Thomas Fredericks, a postdoctoral fellow at JPL, referring to the peak in global dam projects at the time. We impounded so much fresh water, humanity nearly brought sea levels to a halt. Since the 1990s, however, Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets, mass loss, and thermal expansion have accelerated sea level rise. While freshwater impoundment has decreased, our climate continues to warm. The majority of the thermal energy is absorbed by the oceans, causing the volume of water to expand in fact. Ice sheets melt, and thermal expansion now account for 2/3 of the observed global mean seawater rise. Mountain glacier meltwater currently contributes to another 20%, while declining freshwater storage on land adds the remaining 10. All told, sea levels have risen on average 1.6 millimeters or 0.063 inches per year between the 1900 and 2018. In fact, sea levels are rising at a faster rate than at any time in the 20th century. But previous estimates of the mass of melting ice and thermal expansion of the ocean fell short of explaining this rate, particularly before the era of precise satellite observations of the world's oceans, creating a defect in the historic sea level budget. Finding a balance, in simple terms, the sea level budget should balance if the known factors are accurately estimated and added together. It's a bit like balancing the transactions in your bank account. Added together, and all the transactions in your statement should match the total. If they don't, you may have overlooked a transaction or two. The same logic can be applied to the sea level budget when each factor that affects the sea level is added together. This estimate should match the sea level that scientists observe. Until now, however, the sea level budgets have fallen short of the observed sea level rise. That's a problem, said Fredericks. However, how could we trust projections of future sea levels change without fully understanding what factors are driving the changes that we have seen in the past? Fredericks said an international team of scientists to develop a state-of-the-art framework that pulls together the advances in each area of study, from sea level models to satellite observations, to improve our understanding of the factors affecting sea level rise in the past 120 years. The latest satellite observations came from the pair of NASA German Aerospace Center (DLR) Gravity Recovery and Climate Experiment (GRACE) satellite that operated from 2002 to 2017, and their successor pair, the NASA German Research Center for Geoscience (GFZ) and GRACE follow-on launched in 2018. Additional data from the series of TOPX/JASON satellites, a joint effort of NASA and the French space agency National d'Etudes Spatiales, that have operated continuously since 1992, were included in the analysis to enhance tide gauge data. Tide gauge data was the primary way to measure sea level before 1992, But the sea level change isn't uniform around the globe. So there were uncertainties in the historic estimates, said Sonki Dengendolf, an assistant professor of the oceanography at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, and a co-author of the study, also measuring each of the factors that contribute to global mean sea levels was very difficult. So it was hard to gain an accurate picture. But over the past 2 decades, scientists have been flooded with the satellite data, added Dangendorf, which has helped them precisely track the physical process that affect sea levels. For example, Grace and Grace-Faux measurements have accurately tracked global water mass changes, melting glaciers, ice sheets, and how much water is stored on land. Other satellite observations have tracked how regional ocean salinity changes and thermal expansion affect some parts of the world more than others. Up and down movements of Earth's crust influence the regional and global levels of water, or of oceans as well. So these aspects were included in the team's analysis. With the Grace and Grace-Faux data, we can effectively extrapolate the relationship between these observations and how much sea level rise at a particular place, said Felix Landerer, project scientist at JPL for Grace-Faux and co-author of the study. All observations together give us a pretty accurate idea of what contributed to sea level change since 1900, and by how much. The study, titled "The Cause of Sea Level Rise Since 1900", was published August 19th in Nature. In addition to scientists from JPL and Old Dominion University, the project involved researchers from Caltech University, Katholieke de Leuven in Belgium, University of Siegen in Germany, the National Oceanography Center in the United Kingdom, Corree Institute in New York, Chime Academy of Science, and Academia Tsinghua in Taiwan, referenced The Cause of Sea Level Rise Since the 1900 by Thomas Fredericks, Felix Landerer, Lambert Caron, Surendra Adhara, David Parks, Vincent W. Humphrey, Sonki Dengendorf, Peter Hogarth, Laurie Zanon, Lingjing Xing, and Yanyao Wao. 19th of August 2020, Nature. JPL managed the Grace mission and manages the Grace-Faux mission for NASA's Earth Science Division of the Science Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters in Washington, based on Pasadena, California. Caltech manages JPL for NASA.